Welcome to the fourth part of this series. Previously, the protagonist uncovered the lost sword technique and had a sweet yet unexpected encounter with Lady Harin. What twists await next? Let's dive in. The innkeeper, her father, offers a hesitant apology to the group, his voice tinged with regret. "This kid, I'm sorry. My daughter is very shy around strangers," he explains, his words trailing off as if he knows they cannot fully capture the depth of her guarded heart. Master observes her with a mix of pity and understanding. "I understand. She's just a child after all," he murmurs of Banok. Though the protagonist's mind races with the realization of how much she has endured, his expression is shadowed by the weight of their sect's failures. The scene shifts to the past, a time when the Gongdong sect still held some semblance of power. There was a sword fight between sects at the communal inn. Her mother got caught up in it and tragically passed away, a stark reminder of the chaos and violence that have plagued their world. Not just the sects, but even the Gongdong sect, which couldn't help against their tyranny. Of course, she resents us. His gaze falls on Harin. Harin stands silently, her small hands clenched into fists. The pain of losing her mother, coupled with the sect's inability to protect her, has left her emotionally scarred. As they continue their meal, "Thank you for the meal," the protagonist says, his voice soft but filled with determination. The group enjoys a meal at Gongdong Inn, the atmosphere lightening slightly. Cholsu, relieved, remarks, "The food here is quite good. Finally, got some proper protein after a while." He observes Harin's prickly demeanor but notes, "We even got to meet Baek Dajelwa today." Harin notices the look of the protagonist and runs away. Jinvi turns to the protagonist, asking sarcastically, "Master, did you enjoy today's outing?" The protagonist replies thoughtfully, "It was enlightening," though he is startled by that whispering. Jinhui's eyes glisten with delight upon hearing the protagonist's praise. "Really? I'm so glad you enjoyed it," she says warmly. Meanwhile, the protagonist's thoughts swirl. "Every time I see him, I can't help but be amazed by his ridiculously attractive face. If Harin joins the Gongdong sect, she might completely fall for senior." He clenches his fists. "And what if he even takes my spot as the #1 brother? No, I need to do something about this." But shaking his head, he pushes those thoughts aside and turns toward his master. "Master, how about we make these outings a regular thing?" he suggests. Master lets out a hearty laugh. "Ho ho! Did you enjoy eating out?" The protagonist nods. "I did. More than that, seeing everyone and realizing the effort you put into rebuilding the sect inspires me to work even harder. I want to become a proper martial artist as soon as possible so I can support them too." Master, giving a knowing smile, replies, "Is that so? Very well." Determined, the protagonist declares, "From now on, let's go out once a month." "Thank you, Master." As he bowed in gratitude, an almost imperceptible smirk crossed his face, his true intentions surfacing. This wasn't just about bonding, it was about solidifying his connection with Harin before Jinvi could. The scene shifts back to the sect. The protagonist rummaged inside his shirt, searching for something, a symbol of his dedication, his path to becoming the most impressive man. He retrieved a stone tied with a rope. Kegel and jelking exercises, he thought, preparing himself for the hanging routine. The next scene shows him removing his clothes, securing the stone with the rope, and focusing on the lower half of his body. The importance of this rigorous training was clear, an exercise designed to strengthen the body by bearing weight slowly, enhancing vitality like no other. Now that I've reclaimed the sect's martial arts from the caves, shouldn't my accomplishments reflect in size too? With renewed determination, he began the routine. His eyes burned with focus. The stones clanked together, his gritted teeth barely muffling his pained groans. Morning or night, it didn't matter. His dedication was unwavering. Day after day he endured, pushing himself further. And just like that, a year passed. Standing tall, he gazed at the results of his relentless effort, satisfaction evident on his face. With a triumphant smirk, he untied the stone and dropped it to the ground. It had grown larger over time, just like his achievements. Pulling up his pants, he marveled. A whole year of hanging exercises, and the results are astonishing. What a sight to behold. But his ambition didn't end there. He dreamed of mastering vitality itself. As he continued his meditation, an unexpected sensation overtook him. A strange glow emanated from there. His eyes widened in alarm. What the hell? The eerie glow intensified, leaving him both stunned and horrified. It was then that the truth became clear. This was yet another unforeseen side effect of the mixed origins technique he had encountered in the cave. Every time he used young Gangchi, the little guy would stretch and stand tall, completely out of his control. With a devastated expression, he grasped the full weight of this predicament. At this rate, I'll be labeled a pervert. Beautiful women will avoid me. Just then, a voice echoed from outside his door. Disciple! Are you in there? It was Jinvi. The protagonist groaned in frustration. Why does senior brother always show up at the worst possible moments? He opened the door. A beat of silence. He came outside, hiding his malfunctioning system. In a hesitant voice, he asked, "What is it, senior brother?" The protagonist flinched as his senior's concerned voice snapped him back to reality. Are you feeling unwell, disciple? She asked. No, I'm fine, he stammered, forcing a smile. She nodded. Since today's our outing, I came to go with you. Ah. He barely managed a response, still shaken. Master went ahead to Huajiang County. Take your time getting ready, she added before turning to leave. Watching her descend the stone steps, he swallowed hard. All right, I'll be ready shortly, he blurted out, rushing inside. But it seems Jinvi noticed the protagonist's malfunctioning. Wondering if he hit puberty, she remained lost in thought. After a while, they reached Gongdong Inn. Lady Seo quietly served tea, but quickly turned away, avoiding the guests. The protagonist thanked her for the hospitality, but she responded with silence, swiftly walking away. The protagonist observed her behavior, noting how it was no longer hostility but mere avoidance, an improvement from their last meeting. Yet something felt off. The steaming teacup, the deserted inn, it was too strange. As he looked around, realization dawned. Why is this place completely empty? You noticed too, disciple, Jinvi said, her sharp blue eyes scanning the vacant hall. The communal inn being completely empty is a first. Before they could further process the situation, the sound of footsteps echoed through the wooden floor. The innkeeper stepped forward. Welcome, the newcomer greeted, their voice carrying an unsettling weight. Recognizing him, the disciple remarked, It's been a while, Mr. So, but worried about his unwell appearance. Ignoring the concern, the protagonist ordered his usual meal, keeping up appearances despite the unease lingering in the air. As So agreed to his meal, he suddenly collapsed. Both Jinvi and the protagonist were shocked. So Harin, his daughter, rushes to his side in shock, calling out to him. The disciple and others quickly assist him, concerned. So, weak but conscious, admits his health has been poor, feeling embarrassed by the incident. Jinvi and the protagonist notice the struggling innkeeper, Mr. Seo, and suspect trouble. He confirms their fears, revealing that the communal inn is on the verge of closing. Mr. Seo finally reveals the cause of his distress. The Wild Shadow Society. This group built its power by extorting protection fees and lending money at exorbitant interest rates to merchants in Huajiang County. However, a few months ago, they set their sights on the communal inn. They began threatening merchants, warning them not to do business with the inn. They even staged fights in front of it, creating an intimidating atmosphere that drove customers away. With no one left to support the Gongdong Inn, debt started piling up, and Mr. Seo found himself trapped with no way out. His voice trembles as he speaks, tears welling in his eyes. More than the financial burden, he fears for his daughter, Harin. If this continues, she could soon be in danger. Left with no other choice, he makes a painful decision. He will close the inn. The protagonist recalls how Seo Harin, despite her deep resentment toward martial artists, joined the Gongdong sect. It wasn't her choice. It was a desperate measure by her father, Mr. Seo, to shield her from the Wild Shadow Society's harassment. Though the Shadow Society was merely a gang of thugs, their connection to the powerful Black Dragon sect of Sichuan rendered the weakened Gongdong sect powerless against them. Mr. Seo was helpless. Ordinary people caught in the conflicts of martial artists had few choices, and he was running out of options. As their conversation unfolds, a sudden, violent kick shatters the silence, blasting the door open. Everyone turns, startled. 3 thugs stand in the doorway, grinning wickedly. One of them steps forward, his voice dripping with mockery. If you couldn't pay your debts, you should have handed over the inn by now. We've warned you plenty of times, haven't we? Another sneers, his eyes narrowing. No money? Then sell your daughter to us. Before anyone can react, one of them lunges forward, grabbing Harin's wrist. A wave of fury flashes across Jinvi's face. His voice erupts like thunder. You vile scum! As the thug starts dragging Seo Harin away, she screams, Father! Desperation fills her voice as she struggles, reaching out toward her father. Mr. Seo rushes to grab her, but before he can, the thug seizes her face, smirking cruelly. Such a beauty, he sneers. You should work for our establishment to pay off your father's debt. Tears well up in Seo Harin's eyes. No, no way! With a surge of fear and defiance, she breaks free and dashes toward her father. At that moment, a sharp voice cuts through the chaos. Hey! The protagonist stands, his presence commanding attention. In the blink of an eye, before anyone can react, the thug lets out a sudden scream. His hand is pinned in place, 2 chopsticks embedded into his wrist. He writhes in pain, eyes wide with shock. Another thug steps forward, scanning the room. Who did this? Who dares to interfere? His voice is laced with both anger and caution. Then they see him. The protagonist stands firm, his black martial robe adorned with an inverted taiji emblem. Recognition dawns on one of the thugs, his expression shifting. The Gongdong sect, he mutters. The other scoffs. That defunct, half-dead sect dares to challenge us? But another thug notices something different, something far more dangerous. His eyes widen in fear. That's not the point. This guy. In the next moment, golden light begins to glow from the protagonist's toy. It was up, illuminating the dimly lit inn. What a time for side effect to kick in. As soon as the protagonist realized his predicament, all traces of heroism vanished. His earlier rage had made him react faster than usual, inadvertently freeing Seo Harin from the thug's grasp. Now, she was safe in her father's arms, tears streaming down her face as she embraced him, a rare and heartfelt moment of relief. On the other hand, the protagonist was desperately trying to conceal his unexpected side effect. Just then, a voice called out to him. Junior. It was Jinvi. Her face was flushed, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. That was a martial arts technique to confuse the opponent, right? She asked hesitantly. Faced with no other choice, the protagonist swallowed his pride and nodded in agreement. But then another thought struck him. Why was Jinvi blushing so intensely? The thugs, meanwhile, burst into laughter. One of them wiped away tears of amusement, sneering, "A nobleman who gets all worked up in the middle of a fight? What a comedy show!" Another chuckled darkly. "And here I thought the Gongdong sect was just full of pretty-faced eunuchs. But look at this guy, as solid as a mountain." The moment of mockery was short-lived. The lead thug's laughter faded as he gripped his sword, his gaze sharpening with menace. "Enough jokes. You messed with the wrong people, and now you'll pay." The blade gleamed under the dim inn lights as he raised it, ready to strike. The protagonist, unfazed, bent down and picked up a discarded spoon from the floor. Inspecting it for a moment, he muttered, "A blood price, huh? Fine, take all you want." Spinning the spoon between his fingers, he added casually, "But if you fail, you'll lose something very precious." The thug's expressions twisted in fury. "You bastard!" one of them roared. Ignoring them, the protagonist turned to Jinvi. "Senior brother, leave this to me. Please protect Elder Seo and Harin." Jinvi hesitated. "Are you sure you can handle them alone?" The protagonist's eyes gleamed with confidence. "Absolutely." With a firm nod, Jinvi rushed toward Mr. Seo and Harin, offering a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," she said, steadying their nerves. "He may have been a bit eccentric earlier, but he is truly strong." The thugs, still fuming, charged forward, their weapons slashing through the air. The first thug lunged, bringing his sword down in a vicious arc, but the protagonist sidestepped effortlessly, his movements fluid. Raising the spoon in his hand, he moved in a flash. With an almost imperceptible flick of his wrist, he struck. A pained scream echoed through the inn. The thug doubled over, his face contorted in agony. Another thug barely had time to react before thwack! The protagonist struck again, his spoon landing a direct hit. A second scream followed. The protagonist dashed forward towards the third one, 4 jewels down. The third thug, who had been watching the fight unfold in stunned silence, finally snapped out of his daze. What are you counting?" he stammered. The protagonist smirked, raising his spoon once more. "Smashing 6 eggs with just 1 spoon. That's quite the profit." The third thug paled, realization dawning too late. With a swift final strike, another crack echoed through the inn. Just as the tension in the room settled, the doors of the Gongdong Inn swung open once more. The sect master strode inside, his voice filled with concern. "Is everyone all right? Sorry I'm late. I just came from meeting the jeweler with plenty of cash." But as his eyes swept across the scene before him, his expression twisted into sheer confusion. The once rowdy thugs were now curled up on the floor, groaning in agony. The protagonist sitting in anger while Jinvi remained at his side, his brows furrowed. "Why don't you explain quickly what happened here?" Then his gaze landed on the battered bodies of the thugs, and a new thought struck him. "Wait, I told you to eat. So what on earth did you do with that spoon?" The protagonist bowed respectfully. I unintentionally caused quite a bit of damage while trying to settle the chaos at the inn. Both the protagonist and Jinvi now bore fresh marks on their foreheads, courtesy of the master's swift disciplinary strikes. The innkeeper chuckled nervously before stepping forward. "It's fine. If it weren't for this young master, we might have lost the inn today." Hearing this, the master's expression darkened. "Trying to seize the inn, were they? I will personally go after those scoundrels." But the innkeeper's face paled, and he quickly shook his head. "No, please don't. The Shadow Society is backed by the Black Dragon Gang, aren't they? There's no need to risk further trouble. I'll take care of things myself." He hesitated for a moment before glancing at his daughter. His voice trembled with concern. "I just don't want this to happen to Harin ever again." The master let out a quiet sigh, his eyes softening with understanding. "I see. Then from now on, Rin will be under the protection of the Gongdong sect." However, before anything was finalized, the protagonist stepped forward. The master and innkeeper turned to him, waiting for his input. At that moment, the protagonist's thoughts drifted to his past life. If things continued down this path, Harin would inevitably join the sect as a disciple, just as she had before. But from his perspective, that wasn't the best option. So Harin was still young. Closing off her heart and dedicating herself entirely to the martial world would only deepen her scars. Simply inducting her into the sect wouldn't be enough. Her pain had to be eased as well. His expression hardened with determination. If we turn a blind eye to the hardships of someone we consider family, how could our sect ever claim to walk the righteous path? The master observed him in silence before finally speaking. "You're suggesting something different, aren't you?" The protagonist nodded. "All right," the master continued. "I understand your concern, but what do you propose we do?" The room fell quiet for a moment. Then the protagonist's voice rang out, steady and unwavering. "I will send a challenge letter to the Black Dragon Gang in the name of our sect." A stunned silence filled the room. Jinwi's eyes widened. The innkeeper froze. Even the master was taken aback. Finally, the master let out a sharp breath. "A challenge letter? Do you really think they'll accept it?" The protagonist smirked, his confidence unwavering. "We just have to make it so that they have no choice but to accept." As per the protagonist's will, the challenge letter was sent to the Black Dragon Gang. Upon receiving it, a member of the gang was stunned. The Gongdong sect, on the verge of extinction, had somehow found the audacity to challenge the mighty Black Dragon Gang directly. His expression twisted with anger. "Those Gongdong sect bastards have no sense of their place," he spat, gripping the letter tightly. He read its contents aloud, a 2 versus 3 consecutive match. If the Gongdong sect loses, they will seal their gates for 50 years. If the Black Dragon Gang loses, they must completely withdraw from Huajiang County. A deep frown formed on his face. What kind of conditions are these? 2 fighters from a mere common faction against 3 from the Black Dragon Gang. Wasn't that ridiculously advantageous in their favor? From the shadows, a powerful figure stood, exuding an overwhelming aura. A smirk played at his lips as he thought to himself. With the Black Dragon Gang's Black Death Dragon, Wee Sorion, it would be no contest. But he wasn't willing to trouble her over such trivial matters. Just as he made up his mind, a voice rang out from behind him. "No, that won't be necessary." He turned in shock. The next moment, a graceful yet deadly figure landed smoothly onto his chair. "I will go myself." She was none other than the Black Dragon Gang's Screen Tiger Sword, Yo Ye-yong. The man hesitated and asked if the Shadow Society can handle this matter. But Yo Ye-yong shook her head in firm disagreement. "No, I saw something today that makes this my business." A sharp glint flashed in her eyes as she recalled what she had witnessed at the marketplace. The spoon. The very same spoon the protagonist had used to destroy the thug's jewels. She could still hear his voice, ringing out with unshakable confidence as he raised the spoon for all to see, proclaiming, "With just this spoon I turned the Shadow Society's thugs into eunuchs." The gathered crowd had erupted in a mixture of shock and amusement. "How could such a young master do this?" someone murmured. "2 eggs at a time," another laughed. "The Shadow Society's atrocities are beyond words. Since when was the Gongdong sect so strong?" The entire marketplace had been abuzz with whispers and exclamations. The scene had been nothing short of hilarious. And then the protagonist had boldly declared, "It's clear not just the Shadow Society, but even the Black Dragon Gang is now laughably weak." The Shadow Society has tarnished the Black Dragon Gang's reputation. The weight of his words had spread like wildfire. Hearing all this, the man before Lady Yo lowered his head apologetically. "I'm sorry, Lady Yo," but she merely waved him off. "I will personally take care of this matter and ensure it never happens again." Then, in a quiet murmur, she recalled his name. That Gongdong sect disciple from the marketplace, his name was Li Chul-Su, wasn't it? Determination gleamed in her eyes. It was time for her to step in. Meanwhile, at the Gongdong sect, the protagonist sat deep in thought, murmuring to himself with a victorious smirk. As expected, there's no better story to win hearts than a heroic tale of fighting for justice. He could already imagine the impact of his actions. The righteous hero, Li Chul-Su, who stood against the Black Dragon Gang for the sake of the common folk. In his mind, he envisioned peerless beauties captivated by this tale, their admiration shining through their eyes. Lady Yo-Yo-Yong's eyes burned with fury. That arrogant Li Chul-Su daring to mock the Black Dragon Gang? Her grip tightened. How dare he? She exhaled, suppressing her rage. No, she would teach him a lesson he would never forget. Amidst his martial arts training, the protagonist's mind wandered. There's nothing more captivating than a righteous hero fighting for justice. He imagined the admiration of beautiful women, swooning over his valor against the Black Dragon Gang. Lost in fantasy, he grinned, until the familiar side effect kicked in again. Panic set in. If this happens every time I train, I'm doomed. Trying to focus, he turned his thoughts to the challenge letter he had sent. There was no guarantee the Black Dragon Gang would agree to a fair duel. In his mind, he pictured a masked assassin hired by the gang creeping toward him in the dead of night. Seriously, do these villainous sects suffer from a disease where they must send assassins after their enemies? He muttered to himself, staring at the sky. Then, he felt it. A presence. His eyes snapped toward the treetops. A woman stood on a branch, her figure striking against the light. A woman? He was startled. In his past life, the common faction had battled the Four Shadows Society 4 years later, but there had been no record of a female expert among them. This was new. Before he could process it, the woman leaped down. She landed gracefully, her piercing gaze locked onto him. "Are you Li Chul-Su?" she asked. His face flushed. "Yes, that's right." The moment he answered, her sword flashed. Without hesitation, she lunged. "Let's see what gave you the confidence to challenge the Black Dragon Gang." The protagonist barely dodged in time, his heart pounding. Just like that, Lady Yo studied the protagonist carefully. Decent skills for his age, but nothing extraordinary. Her eyes narrowed as she pressed him. "Did you send that challenge letter believing in the famous Yu Jinvi?" Dodging another strike, the protagonist felt the force behind her attacks. She was strong. Stronger than he had anticipated. He counterattacked, only to be left stunned as she soared effortlessly into the sky, evading his strike. Landing gracefully in front of him, her movements were light as a feather. Impressed, he couldn't help but ask, "That's no ordinary skill. Who are you?" She raised her sword, preparing for another attack. Something about her technique felt familiar. Then, recognition struck him like lightning. His past life's memories surfaced. "Wait! Senior Yo-Ye Ryong of the flower-faced tiger sword," he blurted. Her lips curled into a smirk. "That's right!" His stomach dropped. "Oh no, Yo-Ye Ryong, the flower-faced tiger." A renowned female martial artist feared not just for her combat prowess, but for something even more terrifying. She was infamous for her terrible bet. Rumors told of the disfiguring burns that scorched half her face hidden beneath her veil. But that wasn't the terrifying part. It was her test. She would ask men a simple question: "Am I beautiful?" If the answer was an insincere compliment, she would see through the lie and turn the man into a eunuch. No one had ever passed. His blood ran cold as she gazed at him expectantly. "Well, now that you've recognized me, it's only fair to start the test now." She lifted her veil slightly. "Tell me, how does my beauty appear to your eyes?" The protagonist broke into a cold sweat. Damn it, I can't just give an ordinary answer. He needed something powerful, something heartfelt. Then a thought crossed his mind, a mischievous, audacious thought. With a slow, almost dramatic smile, he whispered to himself, "If sincerity is what she wants, there's only one undeniable way to prove it." The side effect kicked in, a glow, a rise. He stood firm, voice filled with conviction. "Senior Yo-Ye Ryong of the flower-faced tiger sword, you are truly beautiful." Her eyes flicked downward and widened, a moment of silence. Then, "This is outrageous," she shrieked, staggering back. "What on earth did you just raise? You're insane!" With a composed, yet suspiciously smug expression, the protagonist calmly defended himself. "But Senior, didn't you ask me yourself?" Her mind whirled. His words played in her head. "Your clear eyes, your silky soft hair, your graceful figure, like the moon and flowers, all beautiful." She was stunned. No man had ever spoken with such sincerity. She clenched her sword, trying to regain composure. I am 60 years old," she sputtered. "I have posed this challenge countless times, but this level of sincerity, this is the first." She hesitated. Is this what men are truly like? Her truth-seeking eye, a technique capable of discerning truth from deception, had confirmed it. His words were genuine. The protagonist smirked. His plan, and that side effect, had worked better than expected, but he wasn't just basking in victory. No, there was something deeper at play here. For Yu Ye-ryong to make such a bet, there has to be a reason, he thought, piecing it together. While the world knew Yu Ye-ryong as a distinguished female martial arts master of the Black Dragon clan, her true identity was none other than Jeok Sawol, the thousand-faced demon king of Yom, the absolute master of Yeom-gyeom, the #1 figure in the evil sect. Sawol's abilities were legendary. She could transform into anyone, regardless of age or gender, thanks to her 100 faces, 1,000 transformations technique, creating alter egos and messing around in the martial arts world for fun. One of those personas? The very woman standing in front of him, Yu Ye-ryong, the flower-faced sword lady. From a young age, Sawol had been too beautiful for her own good. Men constantly swarmed her, driven by ulterior motives. They didn't care about her, only her looks. And so she developed a quirk. This infamous beauty test was nothing more than a projection of her deep-seated trauma, a way to test whether men truly saw her beyond the surface. And now, this perverted lunatic, standing before her, had just broken the game. The confess-and-gets-colded strategy, a tactic that had scared off countless men, had backfired spectacularly. Sawol had always wondered if someone could truly see past her beauty. And now, even with her truth-seeking eyes which discerned any lie, his words were still registering as truth. Her mind reeled. No way. This can't be right. Until now, every man I've met has only lusted after my appearance. They all tried to subdue me, possess me, but this guy... She swallowed hard, looking at him in disbelief. To think my heart would flutter for this absolute madman who's surrendering himself to me. The protagonist, sensing victory, took a step forward. "Senior, I know that if I pass the test, you must grant me a wish." Lady Yo took one look at him and his proof of sincerity and leaped back in terror. "Stay back, you madman," she shrieked, brandishing her sword. "Do not come near me with that thing." She stared at him, eyes filled with disbelief. Does he truly see me as beautiful? For the first time in decades, Yu Ye-ryong, the mighty flower-faced tiger, was at a complete loss. She could feel it. He had one wish. And given the absurdity of this entire situation, she dreaded what it might be. As the protagonist leaned in, his expression filled with anticipation, she stiffened. Her fingers gripped her sword tighter. Why is he getting closer? Why does he look so hopeful? A heavy silence settled between them. Then, with the utmost sincerity, he asked, "Is it possible?" Lady Yo blinked, her mind racing. Possible? Possible for what? He took a breath and made his wish. The next moment, "You bastard," she roared, her voice shaking the treetops. Her entire face burned with rage, and maybe just a hint of mortification. On a moonlit night, the protagonist leaned in close, whispering into Lady Yo's ear, "My wish is..." He set the scene. A night like this, the two of them under the same roof, engaging in a deep discussion about the Tao of Yin and Yang. But just as the moment seemed to take a romantic turn, he abruptly halted. "I cannot." Lady Yo blinked in confusion. What do you mean you can't? Why not? Reality struck him. He was a disciple of an orthodox sect. Personal desires couldn't outweigh his duty. So with a swift pivot, he declared his true wish, to deliver the challenge letter to Black Dragon Hall and ensure the duel proceeded as planned. Lady Yo's expression darkened. Clearly, she had imagined a different outcome. Her disappointment boiled over into a scream so powerful that the protagonist's sword shattered on the spot. Before he could even process what had happened, he was sent flying, blood splattering from his body. The lion's roar. Dazed and confused, he struggled to understand. He had passed her test, so why the sudden attack? Had she expected something else? As he lay there, questioning his life choices, Lady Yo snapped out of it, rushing to his side. "Are you okay? I didn't mean to. I just accidentally used internal energy while raising my voice." The protagonist, still trying to keep his insides intact, processed her excuse. So she just yells people to death? But then, an idea struck him. With expertly crafted fake tears and a wounded expression, he sighed dramatically. "How could you treat a poor junior like this? I heard you show mercy to those you acknowledge." Lady Yo, already guilt-ridden, hesitated. It was a mistake. He doubled down, feigning pain and emotional distress. Then, with a heavy heart and a heavier act, he delivered the final blow. "Then, will you grant my wish?" Trapped by her own conscience, Lady Yo sighed. "Fine, I'll grant it, no matter what." Behind his pitiful expression, the protagonist smirked internally. Not a serious injury, but the acting, flawless. With a sincere apology, Lady Yo handed the protagonist a clarity pill. "Take this," she said before turning to leave. The protagonist, delighted by the unexpected gift, admired the pill. A little compensation never hurt. Just as he pocketed it, a voice called out, "Junior brother, are you all right?" His heart skipped a beat. Master or senior brother must never find out about this. He quickly composed himself as Jinvi rushed over, visibly tense. She had felt the shockwave from the lion's roar. Something serious must have happened. "Are you okay, junior brother?" she asked, worried. Summoning his best performance yet, the protagonist clutched his side and winced. "Senior brother, I'm fine." He paused dramatically. A group of masked men attacked our sect's gate. A fierce battle broke out. Jinwi's eyes widened. "Masked men?" The protagonist nodded solemnly. "I was injured, but I fought bravely to defend the sect." Jinwi's expression darkened. "This is serious." Inside, the protagonist smirked. Flawless. As angry as senior brother was, the protagonist knew one thing. This rage would make him unstoppable in the duel. That was a win in his book. Meanwhile, Jinwi was still worried. She may not have been able to protect her junior brother this time, but she vowed to make up for it in the duel. Still caught up in emotion, she suddenly hugged him. The protagonist groaned. "Enough already. Can't you just let me go?" The next morning, sunlight bathed the sect as the protagonist examined the clarity pill. "A few days of rest and proper energy circulation and my internal injuries will be as good as new." Just then, Master and Jinhui appeared. "Are you feeling better?" Master asked. In an instant, the protagonist transformed into the picture of frailty. He clutched his chest, his face pale with just the right amount of suffering. "After circulating my energy, I feel much better, Master," he said weakly. Jinhui sighed in relief. "That's good. To speed up your recovery, you should eat something nourishing. Is there anything you'd like?" The protagonist's eyes gleamed. A golden opportunity. "Ah," he sighed dramatically. "I've been eating nothing but greens in this sect. Perhaps now would be a good time for something beneficial for stamina." Suddenly, Jinhui grabbed the protagonist's hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "Whatever junior brother wants, I will provide. Just ask." The protagonist sensed the golden opportunity. With a perfectly pained expression, he sighed. "Well, if you insist, I'd love some pork, boiled pork, and maybe some pig liver." Jinhui nodded without hesitation. "I'll get it for you." He wasn't done. "I've always loved oysters too, but they're quite expensive. Given the sect's financial situation, pork is the most reasonable choice." What a performance. Jinhui straightened up, determination in her eyes. "Got it, junior brother." Without another word, she bolted out of the sect. "Just rest well. I'll be back soon." As she ran, her mind swirled with guilt. This was my fault. I should have protected him. Her chest tightened. Being near him made her feel at peace, like she was reverting to being just a woman again. But no, she was senior brother first. She had to be strong. Her weakness had cost him. She clenched her fists. "I must not falter again." Lost in thought, Jinhui suddenly found herself standing before the Guangdong Inn. The next moment she was seated in front of Mr. Seo and Harin, recounting everything, the lion's roar, the black masked men, and the protagonist's supposed injuries. Mr. Seo stroked his beard. "So, you've come to ask for pork for your injured junior brother, haven't you?" Jinhui hesitated but nodded. Swallowing her pride, she made the request. With a warm smile, Mr. Seo agreed. "Of course. That disciple got hurt protecting me and Harin. It's the least I can do." Just as Jinhui felt relieved, Harin spoke up. "Wouldn't it be better if he recovered at our main house? I can take care of him there." Jinhui frowned. "Why go through all that trouble? I can take care of him myself." Before she could question it, Harin added casually, "Well, as his future wife, isn't it only natural that I do so?" The air froze. Jinhui blinked. Future what? A quick turn indeed. The past resurfaces as Mr. Seo, visibly drunk, sits at a table cursing the Shadow Society. Just then, Lady Harin approaches. In his inebriated state, Mr. Seo slurs out a question. Was she all right? Harin, noticing the deep worry in her father's eyes, asks him what's troubling him. After all, the Gongdong sect is supporting them, so why the concern? For a moment, Mr. Seo is speechless. Then, with a heavy sigh, he confesses he's worried about the upcoming duel between the Gongdong sect and the Black Dragon gang. If we lose, our family will. He stops himself, but Harin already has tears in her eyes. Switching gears, Mr. Seo abruptly asks, more importantly, Harin, what do you think of that young master? Harin, caught off guard, blinks. As a martial artist, he seems decent. She hesitates, then adds, the way he stood up to the Shadow Society scoundrel was rather brave. Mr. Seo nods, suddenly looking quite satisfied. In his drunken wisdom, he has come to a decision. This young master is a dependable man, the perfect husband for Harin. Harin, realizing where this conversation is heading, turns red. Her face betrays a mix of embarrassment and panic, but she ultimately agrees to whatever her father decides. Fast forward to the present, and now she's earnestly asking Jinvi to take care of the young master, because, well, he will be her husband. Mr. Seo, now partially sobered by the weight of his own words, scrambles to backtrack. I just meant that if Harin is to marry, it should be to someone like that young master. Harin, unfazed, continues. Isn't he injured because of me? It's only right that I take care of him. Jinvi, meanwhile, stands speechless. While Harin wasn't wrong, something about this whole situation felt off. Trying to smooth things over, Mr. Seo insists that if the young master cannot come to their main house, then Harin should go to the sect to care for him instead. The streets have been dangerous since that day, and the main sect would be safer. With that, the scene shifts to the sect, where things are bound to get even more interesting. At the sect, the protagonist lay resting, with his master seated dutifully by his side. But rather than feeling grateful, he was visibly displeased. Why, of all people, was this old man the one looking after him? In an ideal world, he would be tended to by a beautiful young woman, someone gentle and caring. His imagination wasted no time filling in the gaps. He pictured a lovely nurse by his bedside, doting on him with tender concern. Of course, in his grand theory of recovery, true healing wasn't just about medicine or rest. No, a single harmonious exchange of yin and yang, purely for medical purposes of course, would supposedly restore him to full strength instantly. Alas, reality was far less accommodating. Instead of soft hands and sweet whispers, he had his master's stern presence and zero sympathy. Fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humour. As the protagonist lay in bed, his master suddenly sensed an arrival at the sect. Rising to his feet, he instructed the protagonist to rest before stepping out to greet the guests. For the protagonist, this was actually great news. Finally, some alone time. And what better way to spend it than by focusing on his dedicated training regimen? After all, it had been 1.5 years since he started his Kegel exercises, and now he was seeing results, visible results. Even the thick blanket couldn't completely conceal his newfound presence. His thoughts drifted to his past life, where he had desires but no means to act on them. Now, however, he had both the will and the ability. Alone at last, he wondered, should he give it a try? Just as he was contemplating his next move, the door swung open. Young master, it's been a while. Lady Harin stood there, composed and graceful. The protagonist, on the other hand, was not composed. His soul nearly left his body. As Harin approached and sat near him, he stammered, "What are you doing here?" With a calm smile, she replied, "I'll be staying here to take care of you." Of all times, now was when she had to show up. Fate clearly had a cruel sense of timing. As if things couldn't get worse, Lady Harin then graciously offered to assist him with a bath. At this point, his body wasn't sure whether to be grateful or terrified. His brain, however, had already entered full panic mode. Without hesitation, Lady Harin reached for the blanket, ready to assist the protagonist with his bath. Panic surged through him. His secret was about to be exposed. Letting out a horrified scream, his voice echoed through the sect. Meanwhile, in another room, Jinvi was busy cooking when an uneasy feeling washed over her. She recalled how boldly Harin had declared herself the protagonist's future wife. That was frustrating enough, but what truly bothered her was knowing that Harin would grow into a beautiful woman, something Jinvi could never openly acknowledge for herself. Scowling, she thought, even if I don't like him romantically, Master is important to me. I can't just let any woman marry him, even if it's Seo Harin. She needs to be tested first. Just then, the door opened. Harin walked in. "You're back already?" Jinvi asked, surprised. Harin sighed. The young master refused, saying men and women shouldn't mingle. Of course, we know that wasn't the real reason, but Jinvi, hearing this, couldn't help but smirk. So he rejected Harin? That was unexpectedly satisfying. Meanwhile, back in his room, the protagonist sighed in relief. Crisis averted. He had somehow escaped disaster. Or so he thought. Suddenly, Jinvi burst through the door. "Junior brother!" He blinked in confusion. "You sent Harin away because she's a woman, right?" "Good job," she said, nodding approvingly. "Since I'm a man like you, you can trust me. Let me take care of you instead." His stomach dropped. How did it come to this? Before he could protest, Jinvi started pulling the blanket that kept his secret hidden. "No need to hold back," she declared cheerfully. The protagonist was horrified. Why does she want to do this? He tried desperately to resist, but Jinvi was determined. "Relax, I'll even loosen your tense muscles," she said, rolling up her sleeves. And just like that, she started rubbing his back, her first ever massage for him. Against all odds, it was actually working. His muscles did feel less tense. Lying there in mild despair, but also undeniable relief, he muttered through teary eyes, "It's all because of that lady, yo." But deep down, he couldn't deny, this felt kinda nice. At the Black Dragon sect, Lady Yo sat deep in thought, her mind drifting to him. "Cholsu, he isn't seriously injured, is he?" she muttered. Surely he didn't just collapse and never get up again. The memory of him lying on the ground flashed in her mind, her brows furrowed. "Wait, am I actually worried?" She scoffed at herself. Me? The supreme master of martial arts? The number one in the evil sect? The most beautiful woman envied by men and feared by women across the Central Plains, worried about some mere boy from the Gongdong sect? Ridiculous. Shaking off the thought, she called for her subordinate. "I'm taking a quick trip to the Black Dragon Gang's main base. While I'm gone, don't cause any trouble." Of course, we know exactly where she was headed. As she ran, she kept reassuring herself, "I'm only doing this because I made a promise. That's all." But then, his face popped into her mind. She clenched her fists. No way. There is no way I have feelings for someone like Cholsu. Still, the more she tried to deny it, the more that cute face lingered in her thoughts. Was she lying to herself? Was she really falling for him? And what about Jinvi and Harin? Stay tuned for the next part. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Your support helps us bring more amazing content. Thanks for watching.